Hello there, party poopers. It is, your old buddy, Get Comfy Truckin'. Which I guess I gotta come up with a better fucking name for myself. Get Comfy Truckin' makes sense to me, because that's been my, Xbox Live, gamertag, username on PSN. Anything that's got a nickname associated with it. I've been Comfy Sauce for, since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 came out on Xbox 360. Right? So, 10 years or so. And I realized, Get Comfy Truckin' was kind of interesting, but I also realized that gets kind of difficult when you're, nobody else knows what the hell you're talking about. But hey, that's whatever. Oh, this guy fucking flashes headlamps. Let me move over again. What a nice person. I'm just on the outskirts of Albuquerque, heading west. Already went through, Tucumcari. Got to go to Tucson. Do the opposite of the song there. Driven every kind of rig that's ever been made. Fucking road hammers. I figured I'd film going through Albuquerque just to do the overpass and stuff. It's kind of cool. Assuming that I don't somehow either get bored and shut the video off or fucking run into somebody, so I never upload this. But that's the risk you take, right? Living life on the edge out here. So I'm actually making reasonably good time today. I was surprised. The plan was to try and get as far as possible. I had 3 days to get to Tucson, Arizona, or Tempe, Arizona, which is south end of Phoenix. So I kind of figured I wasn't gonna do, I was gonna be doing part of my driving super early Thursday mornings. It delivers Thursday, which as of the time of filming this is tomorrow. Okay, I'm entirely fucking static. Get out of here. So I shut down last night. I was like, well, fuck. I still have almost 1,200 kilometers to go, which is, I want to say around 850 or 860-ish miles. So we got 660's 1,000. So yeah, another 2 hours worth of driving on that. So you're 660, so 720, so 780 miles, give or take. So I figured, okay, I'm gonna do about the same as yesterday, right? About 660 miles, and then squeeze the rest out. Get up at I deliver at 8 a.m. Mountain Time tomorrow, so I gain an extra 2 hours because I run at Eastern Standard Time. So here's the great city of Albuquerque. I can technically get up probably 4 or 5 in the morning my time, which is 2 or 3 in the morning local time, and if I needed to, right, and then run down to Tempe, for to be there early, and then get my second deliveries in Phoenix proper. So I think it's 15 minutes away for a 10 a.m. appointment. But I might not have to do that. I might be able to get up a bit later, because I'll probably fall, depending on how many mountains there are, because it's been a while since I've been down this way, and I can't really remember how many hills I gotta climb. I should be left with maybe 100 or 200 kilometers left, so about 1 to 2 hours of driving, about 120 miles. I think at worst, right, at best, I'll probably be just outside of the whole greater Phoenix metropolitan area, which means that I can, just kind of hop in the morning. I want to get to my delivery early. I've looked. I have a tendency, especially now that I'm back to doing this. I have a tendency to Google my deliveries. When I used to work for Scotland, when I hauled produce, there was a lot of times you'd show up at a customer, and you wouldn't know what to do, right? You'd show up, and maybe there's no signage, so you're not sure which one's the entrance, which is the exit, right? So you try your best, and if you're wrong, usually somebody's going to curse you out, yell at you, and call you an idiot. Even though, you may have never been there before. I think also, that doesn't even work that well as an excuse, because a lot of people use it as an excuse even if they have been there before, right? They're just ignorant or dumb or whatever. Well, it's my first time here. It's like, yeah, we get that all the time, buddy, sure. Right? So I've been trying to Google and look at the parking lot layouts and reviews, because a lot of the reviews on most of the places I pick up and deliver to, there are at least, it's usually a 50-50 split. If it's something like where I'm going, which is a distribution center, it's a 50-50 split between people who work there and people who deliver there, or like truck drivers that interact with the place. So looking at the trucker reviews, I can kind of get an idea sort of what I'm in for. And this place, apparently they're nice, they're very nice, but it's tight and it's busy. And it also is a blind side only back with not a lot of room in front for your setup. So I'm hoping that the earlier I show up, I don't care if I get into a door and then I have to sit and wait for 2 hours until 8 a.m. I'm totally fine with that, because once I'm in a door, I'm not worried about it. I tend to suffer from a lot of self-confidence issues, especially when it comes to like when I have an audience, or God forbid, there's people that are like in a rush and are like pushing me to hurry up. I lack whatever specific ingredient the human brain needs to basically just fucking think it's funny and tell the guy to go fuck himself and not let it bother me. It will bother me. Like I've said, I think I've even said in these videos, and I've said to a lot of places I've delivered to, they're like super tight but very quiet. They're like, yeah, sorry man, we know it's really tight here and stuff. It's like, you know what? No, like I am totally fine with a difficult reverse, as long as like as long as I'm not being rushed or have a bunch of people trying to get around me to do shit, right? So like most of our deliveries are at like small machine shops, stores, right? Like my second delivery is all fucking fireplaces to a fireplace retail location, right? So there's the potential that there may not even be a dock, right? Which is fine. I mean, if I show up there and they don't have a pump cart, they're fucked, because I don't think there is, sometimes like dispatchers say, well, see if you can get the previous delivery to move the next delivery to the back of the trailer. It's like, that's great, but it's 16 pallets, so no matter what you do, a large part of the load is not going to be far enough back on the trailer for you to unfold with a forklift without getting in the trailer. So I haven't actually looked the place up on Google, but I already think I know what it is based on the description of the place. So those places, like I said, it might be a tight little backup spot that might be kind of tricky, but I don't have people trying to rush me or yell at me or, put a whole bunch of undue stress on me. Most of those places, there might be the odd guy that comes out and stands there and just kind of fucking, he's waiting for you to get in so he knows that you're ready, right? Or, I might say, hey, like, what's that side looking like? Do I got room? Or a couple guys, they'll tell you how much room you got. But most of those places, the people that I'm delivering to are not in a particular rush, right? It's not like they've ever been lazy to get me offloaded or anything, but, if again, most of those guys would appreciate me not, pinballing off of their fucking building, even if it means I take a little bit longer to back in, right? And I'm noticing there's a lot of places we go to that are very poorly set up for tractor trailers. I'm noticing a lot more places where, for whatever reason, the engineering team that came up with the parking lot layout and everything, clearly neither consulted a trucker nor have any knowledge of of truckers, or consideration, I guess, for what a truck driver might ideally like to have, in a dock scenario. I mean, I think there's an argument. Well, the trucker just has to deal with it. We're not fucking kidding. You're building this whole building for a trucker. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have a dock where the fucking dock pulls me and I don't have to do nothing and I get a free fucking blowjob and a cookie at the same time. Obviously that doesn't happen, so but I had a conversation with a place I loaded at my last trip back home in just San Leandro, California, which is on the east side of the bay from San Francisco. And we were talking about the parking situation, because it was all like set the parking lot up so that you go in and the building's on your right, which means you have to blindside back into spots.
Keep left at the fork.
And I was kind of surprised because the laneway forms a horseshoe, right? So it's a one-way laneway in and out. But both entrances are wide, so they could have made the first entrance be the entrance and the second one be the exit, and then all the building would be on your left side. But they chose to have, at least approach it from the direction I went, from the interstate. The second entrance is the second driveway is the entrance, and the first driveway is the exit. So you got to go past the building, make a right, and then the building's on your right-hand side. I think I can understand they had an idea of like traffic flow for that, because instead of going, you know, if you're looking down at it and north is up, right? You go, instead of going left, up, left, back up, left, down, right to get out, you go left, up, right, down, left, right? So in their head, it almost forms like a spiral, or, you know, a little, I don't know what you call it, like a fucking, yeah, like a spiral symbol, to get in and out, right? So I think they thought in their head that seemed like it's slightly less jarring, less turns for the drivers to make, but then it means that the docks are on your right-hand side, which, like, that can be a complete non-issue depending on how big the property is. Like at that particular place, at the time, there was so much room in front of the trucks that either way, like you could make a left and have your truck completely straight. So there was more than a truck's length in front of the doors, or in front, like, you know, like when a truck is backed into the dock, you could fit probably another truck and a half, almost 2 trucks in front of them, right? So that was like kind of helpful. I guess I'll grab onto the right. I think all 3 fucking lanes go through the city. I'm not sure. We'll find out. There's a guy up my fucking asshole in the middle of the lane. So the Covenant has been kind of unsure how fast they want to go, but kind of sitting right around my speed. So we'll let this guy deal with it. But I noticed that the parking lot, like the back, that lot had car parking spaces in it. The car parking spaces were very, very close to the door, to the trucks parked to the door. Like I'm talking, you could fit like a pickup lengthwise in front of the truck. So less than an entire, like just the tractor portion of a tractor trailer could fit between the fronts of the trucks in the dock and the parking spaces if the cars were there. So if for some reason that lot is full, unless there is like 4 or 5 empty docks that you're backing into, you will never get a truck in that dock. You will never get a trailer in that dock, I should say. Because even somebody with a very short wheelbase truck, your trailer, if you have a 53-foot trailer, will never get straight between 2 other 53-foot trailers in that space. Now, like, I think it's likely that that's an overflow lot, and it'll be mostly that, you know, the second shift parks there when they come in, because they don't do receiving at that point in time, because they have specific receiving hours. So that might very well be the case. So it looks like you're going to be on the left lane. But I don't really, like I said, I don't know, right? So it wasn't a big deal to get in and out of there. But it was just, again, it's one of those things where you're kind of sitting there like why didn't you just, all you had to do was change the entrance and the exit, like just change the signs on them, and this whole property would be a lot easier for truck drivers, right? It was, you know, one of those weird little things that you're like, well, that's clearly, like, nobody thought of it, and it's like, you know, I find it interesting that in 2020 there's still a lot of people that either don't think it makes a difference to a driver which side he backs in on, or think it's easier to do it on your right side. I think a lot of people, because right turns are perceived as easier because you're not crossing lanes of traffic, I think a lot of people assume that the truck, you know, would prefer to back up to the right, which is, you know, very obviously not the case. I know that it would also create, in places where there's traffic going in both directions, I can see it also being difficult, because then you need to switch lanes. Like, you know, you're driving in England, because when you're setting up for a dock, you want to be as close to the dock as possible, which means you'd be driving in the left laneway and then cutting hard to the right across the right laneway, backing up, right? But this place is only one-way traffic, so like I turned around and went the wrong way because I said, fuck it, I'm not trucks and their fucking vehicles around. And I had a dock near the end where the parking lot tapers inward, so I actually did not have like a truck length in front of, in front of the doors. But I did have like two empty. Like, there were 3 docks empty, so I only had a truck on one side, and I had two other docks worth of room on my left that I could work with. But this next place apparently it's busy for trucks, and it's a very not ideal backing up situation. So I'm hoping that if I show up early, I can get there before a lot of trucks have shown up. And like I said, even if I get in the door and I gotta sit there for an hour or two, that's fine. It's just at least that I'm not fighting with everybody else trying to get in. Because there are, like, I'm a very good truck driver, but I lack assertiveness. So there are a lot of guys that will come in there and they'll fucking wing it in. They'll one-shot fucking blindside into the hole in their fucking whatever truck, right? And they'll do it all the while fucking blocking me while I was halfway into my reverse, right? Because people have been conditioned at this point, they don't give a fuck about me, right? So, who cares? But, it is what it is, right? I usually see guys with big iron being slow, guys with, curb sniffers are a little bit faster, more aggressive. It's a combination of things, right? Some of it's experience. Most guys who, even if they own a truck, most guys who are running like LTL freight or produce have learned that, at some point you got to say, fuck looks, curb sniffer does the job way better. I'm going to get in, right? So it's not all idiots. It's a lot of guys have realized that a set back front axle Volvo is far more maneuverable than a set forward front axle 389. Right? I also forgotten just how rough New Mexico roads are. It's bumpy as shit. This whole fucking state is bumpy as shit. So like I said, we'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, I'll get in no matter what, right? It's just I will not hit somebody. Like, if I can physically fucking help it. So I will typically I'll get, like, if I got a blind, especially if I got a blind side in, I'll get a look multiple times, right? I've never had it happen to me, but I have watched it happen to other people. Where a guy's trying to back up, he's a little inexperienced, or whatever, he's having a tough time. So he gets out of his truck, and a guy who pulls up, and now, like, he can't move because the guy's backing up, just lays on his fucking horn and sits there on his horn. And there isn't really much I can do, or anyone can do, because, like, unless you physically force the guy, like, stop the guy from blowing his horn, he's gonna blow his fucking horn. Oh, this is cool. There's 2 fucking Covenant trucks next to each other. This is like a Swift fucking scenario where we're gonna have to take a fucking hammer lane or pass him on the shoulder. Actually, it's not likely I'm gonna pass either of them anyway, so I'm fucking losing a lot of speed. So 315 miles to Flagstaff. That's where I gotta go south to get into Phoenix. The one thing I am kind of worried about is I think I'm probably gonna run out of hours somewhere halfway down the fucking mountain south of Flagstaff, which is kind of like not a great place to stop. I think there's a couple of pull-off, like, wide spots, like, for chain up and shit out there, but I don't think there's any truck stops or, any of that shit, so. But we'll see what happens, right? I'm not that, like, 300 miles from Flagstaff isn't too bad. So like I said, I'm about 650 kilometers from my delivery now. That's what 6.5 hours of driving. I've got 6 hours left on the clock, so I'll get probably within an hour of my delivery, as long as I'm not, like, held up in some crazy way, right? Knock on my fake wood dash. But yeah, no, a lot of these shippers, like, a lot of these guys driving trucks have figured out to, prioritize making money over looking cool, and I very much respect that. I don't do that, at least not yet. But I understand it. Like, I think there's multiple ways of structuring. Like, there are a lot of, like, you will get, like, if you decide you're going to go and get your CDL, you will get a multitude of different opinions about, well, like especially when you decide to buy your own truck, right? You've been a company driver for a couple of years or whatever. You decide you want to buy your first truck, and you don't know what you should do, right? You're going to get every person you know that has any stake in owning a truck or thinks they do will tell you something different, right? My dad subscribes to the theory that resale value is a better incentive than fuel economy, for example. So I'm just gonna bump over 70 years so I can fucking stay ahead of Covenant, because they do, I don't know, some of these guys are doing like 68 or some shit. So the I might get 5.5 miles per gallon, but my truck after 5 years will still get me $80,000, right? An aerodynamic truck might get 7 or 8 miles per gallon, like that Freightliner, but at the end of it, it'll be worth $30,000 or $40,000, right? My truck right now is still worth about $140,000. Well, I shouldn't say they will be sold for about $160,000 to $170,000, right? So Pete's and W9s, but more so Pete's and 389s hold their value more than most other trucks. My dad also subscribes to the theory of, and again, this is you're kind of falling into another subcategory. My dad values a good-looking truck over over a practical truck or a comfortable truck, right? Peterbilt 389s are, the driving space is very luxurious, right? We've got nice appointed dash trim. I've got the high-end leather seats, right? They've got a good seat support. It's a very comfortable place to sit when you're doing your job. However, a 389, the bunk on all of the fucking major bunk options, right, is a bed with a couple of cabinets around it and a shelf with some drawers that slide out for fucking storage shit, or resting a notepad on to fucking write shit out while you're hunched on your bed. It does not have it doesn't have a table and chairs. It doesn't have a fucking couch. It doesn't have any of that shit. Right? So the truck, it is certainly not the worst interior by a long stretch, but there are other trucks that do it significantly better. I kind of fall in between that mindset, my dad's mindset, and the comfort mindset. It's the reason why I've been seriously considering a W900, because the interiors and bunks on W900s are much more geared towards the driver using it as a living space, right? This truck, it's a place to sleep when you're done for the day. The W9, again, even without the couch, you got a work table that slides out over your lap properly. You've got lots of windows, lots of storage space, more cabinetry and a smarter cabinet layout than in here. And even the smaller, I guess it's a 72-inch low roof or mid roof that Kenworth has that does not have the windows in the bunk, in the top of the bunk. It's still got more height and head clearance than this truck does. It's got more room in the back too. My dad had one of those. I guess it's kind of like a flat top, but not like flat. I've heard Kenworth calls it a flat top. Most people call it a mid roof. With a couch, my dad had one with a couch in it, and that was a phenomenally enjoyable truck to spend time in the bunk. But there are other trucks that go farther with it, right? Talking just trucks from the factory rather than doing custom sleepers or anything like that. A Volvo, both the current VNR or VNL, I guess it is now a VNL, and the previous generation VNL. Most of them you can get with a table and chairs in it, like a little RV camper thing. It's got nice big cabinets, bumper mounts for shit. Again, a very comfortable place to spend some time if you've got downtime. This guy, of course, is going to pass me because he's fucking empty. He's not going to go down the hill as fast as I'm going down the hill, so I have to. I mean, I shouldn't say slow down because I'm still technically going faster than I went up the hill, but I was going to leave the cruise on so that around fucking 75 the Jake brake would kick in, but since he's kind of there, I got to turn the cruise off, so I start shaking down right away at 70. But yeah, you know, there are some of those trucks that have a much better, like more comfort, right? And those trucks, again, like Volvo is probably considered to be have the best bunk layout, and it is also one of the most fuel efficient trucks, right? But then you'll get guys that say just buy the cheapest thing you can physically fucking, like the cheapest thing that you can get to do the job, right? So for some people that means a very basic spec on a truck, right? Don't get any frills. For others it means buy a used truck, and again, probably not a well-equipped used truck, and because you're just out there to make money, right? Just do your miles. I don't approve of that mindset because it turns, like, I mean, again, some people are okay with it, but it turns trucking into what is, you know, effectively a factory job. When you leave for work, you stop being a human. You start being a piece of machinery, right? So you spend the whole week going without, well, week at least minimum, going without any frills or any comfort or relaxation, solely for the sake of coming home at the end of your trip with a decent sized paycheck or a bigger paycheck than certainly I would make, right? And these different mindsets are more or less effective depending on what you want out of trucking, right? The cheap mindset is best for people who don't want to be gone for very long, right? So if you're doing if you're working where you're home every weekend, for example, then it's, first off, it's not as bad because you're only dealing with the uncomfort or the discomfort of the truck for 4 or 5 days or 4 nights, I guess. Excuse me. And that is going to be your best way to maximize profit if you're an owner operator who effectively is only doing regional work, because you're going to have to minimize. You're not going to make, because you're going to be traveling enough miles to qualify as OTR and get paid mileage, but you're not going to travel enough miles to really, like, you're not going to get big fat paychecks, right? So the less you've got going out, the more you've got in your pocket. And I think on the opposite side of things is people who are driving like Volvos that are all done up, or any like modern truck that is like as loaded as it gets from the factory. Again, I'm not getting into, I'll go get into guys with the big legacy sleepers and stuff after. But again, a Volvo where you've got literally, it's like the inside of an RV in the bunk. That's a great truck if you're gone for 2 or 3 months, right? You've got like a comfortable living space. You've got, you're able to stand, you're able to sit, you're able to sleep. You're able to sit at a dinner table in the comfort of your own truck and not have to, again, you're not dealing with hunching over on a bed. You're not dealing with people who are out here in a flat top who they have to lie down to fucking put their pants on all the way. And, if you're going to be on the road for a long period of time, right, like weeks to months, I would say a Volvo, or I don't know who else does big fucking sleepers like that. I think the new Mac Anthem does it. Like any one of those like big, like fully loaded aerodynamic trucks is probably the way for you to go. I think these kinds of trucks tend to fall somewhere in the middle. Again, I've got enough amenities to stay out for a couple of weeks, right? But I also don't have, again, guys make it work for months on end. But I also don't have, like this truck, I had to modify my cabinets to put a microwave in, right? Because this truck is not designed to have a microwave in it. It's got a fridge, it's got a small fridge, but it does have a fridge. But no way of heating food, right? Most of these trucks are kind of designed to be, for a guy that maybe, I don't know why I'm yawning so much because I'm talking, I guess. A guy who's maybe gone for a week to 2 weeks at a time, and that's about it, right? Now again, there are people who break all of these molds. I've seen guys buy fucking full big bunk Volvos for fucking like borderline local work where they never leave, their own home home every other night. If the company, if you're making enough money to pay for that kind of truck, because a fully decked out Volvo is about the same amount of money as a fully decked out Pete. Then all the power to you. Yeah, fuck yeah. If you can afford it, if you're making that kind of money, hell yeah, I'd want to fucking have a nice, comfortable truck and be home every other night too. And you're never really sacrificing on comfort. But for the rest of us mere mortals that kind of have to choose, that's where you kind of run the line, right? Again, I absolutely understand people that want a fuel efficient and very comfortable truck to live in. The only mindset I don't necessarily agree with, though I don't start arguments over it, is the cheap out on everything mindset. I've seen this manifested everywhere from, again, guys who buy beat up old, trucks that barely pass the safety, to I watched a little part of a video. I can't remember how old it is. I was contemplating buying a 567. So you still get a bit of a hood on a Peterbilt, with the Peterbilt like the 389 headlights, but it'd be more fuel efficient. I'm still going to put a Cummins and an 18 speed in it, but the slope, it does still have a slope nose, so it's supposed to get better fuel economy. So I was looking at reviews on it. One guy was doing a review of his truck, and I could tell from the words he used and basically his mistakes, that he doesn't actually know that much about trucks, right? He's bought his first truck. I don't know whether it was a lease purchase or he bought it outright. He didn't mention. But he just bought a truck off the dealership off the floor, right? So it's one of those things. Dealers tend to have like some weird combinations sometimes. So if I remember right, it had a fixed fifth wheel. It didn't slide, but it did have the Heritage trim. But like he was mad because it has twin stacks. But from I think 2019 was the last year that they made basically Peterbilt did any trucks where both stacks are connected. Like both of my stacks are connected, but all of the new trucks, the driver's side stack is a dummy stack. Right, so he was not mad because it was a dummy. He was mad because they left the stack on. He's like, what do you leave me with all this weight for? And it's like, well, I mean, you bought the truck off the lot, so the Peterbilt's not gonna fucking put a single side stack on a truck, right? Which, a single stack behind the bunk doesn't look as bad, but a single stack on the side then it gets weird. Like it's very asymmetrical, right? If you'd asked for it, they'd probably have pulled it off after you put money on it. But they're not just going to do it, right? So again, it was kind of not that the guy didn't understand trucks or trucking or anything, but I think he bought it because on the lot it wasn't that expensive, right? So I see a lot of guys, and again, a lot of it sometimes I got to catch myself, because a lot of it is guys who lease purchase a truck. So they don't get to choose what it comes with, right? Like there was another YouTube video I watched, and he said I won't say the name of the channel, even though I think the channel name probably isn't. Where's this fucking lane at? Am I gonna get around this guy? Oh yeah, everybody's in the right lane up to the top of the hill. Gotta get this fucking construction guy or cop is just fucking around with shit. He was going from Cascadia to a 579, and again, in him and the guy walking around the trucks, where it's a Freightliner to a Peterbilt. I think it's funny, and I'm again, if the person whose video this is were to ever watch my video, they would probably know I'm talking about them, which I feel kind of bad about. But I'm not trying to shit on anybody for their channels or their choices or their career. Like I have my opinions on certain aspects of trucking. I very strongly advocate against a lease purchase, if only because you are again putting the entire control of your success in somebody else's hands, right? Because as it stands right now, if I don't like it where I'm working, I pack up the truck and leave. It's going to cost me money. It's going to make life difficult for a while. but I take myself and my truck and I leave, right? If I'm a company driver, I take myself and leave, but I've invested no money in a truck, right? A lease purchase driver has invested money in the equipment, but cannot take it with him if he leaves, at least until it's paid for, right? And I think I mentioned it in my last video. I watched a video of a guy who had I think it was a car hauler that he lease purchased in the company. 4 years through into their 5-year term, the company basically, like, because of COVID, the guy missed a couple of payments. The company decided then that, well, he's had a year, we can get rid of him. So they repossessed the truck. And again, I watched most of the video, and I can understand, like, it's not a clear cut. You know, the other guys were the bad guys. You know, they just decided to fuck him. Like, he missed like several payments. He took out like an almost $30,000 loan from the company to keep going. Right? Like, it wasn't like he just was doing everything he's supposed to, and they just tried to fuck him. But they also, you know, the guy in the suit and tie is threatening them. You're gonna go to jail. You're gonna go to fuck. I'm calling the cops. You're going to jail. Get out of that truck, or you're going to jail. He was real, you know, one of those guys that's like, and you can see it in humans. I've experienced it not in trucking, but in factory jobs, where somebody is gone from being a nice, understanding person to all of a sudden they are a piece of shit, right? You can't explain anything to them. They don't care about you. They don't give a fuck about you, your well-being. Part of that's their job. Part of it's human nature. I mean, there's a reason why they got that particular like position at the company, is because they can, you know, switch hats to being somebody who does not care about anybody else, or anybody other than the business. And basically what it boiled down to is the truck got put in the garage, and the guy that drove it was on the street with no fucking money, no truck, and no ride home. And, you know, again, I still feel like this was a massive overpayment. But again, I don't know how much the like an entire car hauling rack is on a truck. But he said it was around $360,000 in the hole that he'd already paid into that truck, right? And that's the big issue with lease purchasing, right? With my current truck right now, right? Especially now that I'm over about 2.5 years, if things go bad financially to the point where I can no longer afford to drive this truck, I sell it. I go to a dealership, I say, I want to sell this truck. And they say, okay, it's worth, we'll give you $130,000 for it. Like, okay. I owe $100,000 on it. So while I lose, and this is it's not entirely fucking free pass. While I lose the roughly almost, well, basically $100,000 after taxes that I have already put into this truck, I don't stand there on a street corner with nothing. I walk away from a dealership with $30,000 in my pocket, right? So then I'm left with options. I have more options than that guy, right? I can use it to pay off whatever I'm behind on. Maybe go be a company guy again. If it's all of that $30,000, maybe try to buy a new truck, right? Like I said, I have that money available to work with. And I don't have to, you know, like I said, I don't have to, I don't know how to put it, right? I'll like, again, there is a difference. Like, if you've bought a brand new truck and 6 months in you can't pay for it, you are not going to get for it what's left going on it, which means you're either going to have to figure out a way to make the payments, or it's probably going to be repossessed, right? That's an understandable risk. But again, I was in a kind of a well, not quite similar situation to that guy, but again, he'd been doing it for 4 years. I was in 3.5. But again, if he owned the truck and it was to a finance company, you know, he's got the option to sell it. But I also think if he'd owned the truck and it was with a finance company, he wouldn't be in that situation, because he wouldn't be working for a company like the company that how do I word it? You know, the money to pay for his truck comes from the company that owns his truck. So all they have to do is just not give him any fucking runs anymore for 2 months. Oh, you couldn't make the payments. You gotta get the truck back. Sorry, right? You know, Scotland, where I worked, they weren't quite that bad. But what they would do is after, I think it was usually about 2.5 years, if you were in the negative or not overwhelmingly positive in their little, they had like a hedge fund or an escrow account. So they would take part of your pay and put it in an escrow that you could then use for incidental repairs and shit. I mean, you could pull out of it anytime you wanted. But the idea was to put it aside for maintenance. Like, they actually, like, Scott Lynn's plan is the least terrible I've come across, but it's still not something that I would recommend to anybody other than somebody who's just gotten their license or has had their license for, 5 or 6 months and wants a chance to drive big iron. I do not recommend it to somebody that wants to own the truck. Let's go with that. Don't ever tell yourself you're going to own that truck. Yeah, go ahead, jump in the fucking ramp so that you can get around everybody. Fucking screeching halt in the middle of fucking interstate, middle ass fuck nowhere. There'll be a million people on the radio. What's going on? So, well, fuck, if you had your radio on, you fucking know. I'm not gonna ask. I didn't have my radio on because I'm fucking doing a video. I'll just deal with it. I'm pretty sure the right lane's closed. Again, you're still likely gonna walk away with nothing. So that guy, again, he walked out of there with nothing, no money invested. I did at Scott Lynn as well, but I also, I treated it like I was a company driver, so I was in a bit of a different mindset, which is beneficial. But Scott Lynn typically did it if after about 2.5 years, you either didn't have the escrow account or your escrow was in the negative, they would force you to take a new truck, right? They'd tell you, like, you can either buy this new truck or we're going to fire you because, whatever reason, X, Y, Z, right? If you were doing well, they'd leave you alone, right? And again, Scott Lynn, it seems like they are a little bit less keen on letting you run 4 out of the 5 years and then just taking the truck from you. But in that last year, they will fucking be harder, right? If you start fucking up left, right, and center, they'll just take the truck, and they won't fire you. They'll take the truck and make you drive a new one. They'll say, we're going to switch it because it's too old. You're not making the payments right now. We'll set you up with a new one. We'll get everything sorted out. It'll be better, right? And they'll basically make you drive a new truck. So all it does is you're going to be in that, like, finance term for another, 5 years. And there are guys that have worked there for 10, 15 years that are completely content with that, right? And that's fine. That's totally fine, right? I think, again, people who want to drive a lease purchase truck, if you're operating, like, if you're basically operating like you're a company driver, then you're going to be fine, right? If you can accept that you probably won't ever own the truck, right? So you do what you got to do to make your paycheck to come home with, right? Then yeah, you can have a truck that is, you'll get some nice iron, pull a nice new trailer. You're still dealing with reefer freight bullshit, but you'll do that anywhere you pull a reefer. And you'll do okay, right? If, on the other hand, you think this is the start to my business, I'm going to create a career, I'm going to be all these things, I'm going to be an owner-operator, you're like 95% guaranteed to fucking be disappointed, right? I leave 5% because while I've yet to meet a single person in Scott Lynn that successfully bought their truck and then became a full owner-operator, and or used their, traded their truck in for a new truck that had no association with Scott Lynn. I'm sure that might exist. Most of the guys there that have been happy are content to flip their truck every 2.5 years. So if you're content with that, then you're going to get a brand new truck every 2.5 years. And, again, some guys like that because they can get the chance every 2.5 years without coming up with a down payment or dealing with the hassle of selling. You can try a different truck, right? For 2.5 years, you drive a 389. Okay, I want to try a W9. No, I want to try a T680. You can do that, but I think anybody that goes into, again, I'm just speaking from Scott Lynn specifically, if anybody goes into it from a perspective of, I'm going to start my business, I'm going to be a businessman and make money and start my owner operating business, you're, like I said, you're doing it wrong. you know, at that point, you should be trying to get a small business loan and buying your own truck, right? And again, the appeal is there, right? For a lot of people, like, you might get a small business loan of fucking $10,000. Well, that isn't going to be enough to be a down payment on a brand new truck, right? Like a brand new 389, for example, they usually want 20% down, so that's anywhere from almost $20,000 to almost $40,000, depending on where you live. Right, like this truck, I applied for financing, was approved, but the build time was like six months. Like it was last 2 years ago. It was a long lead time, or almost 3 years ago now. So the truck showed up. We brought it home. My dad and I put all the stainless on it that we wanted, put all the lights on it. It went back to the dealership, and the afternoon before the day we were scheduled to pick the truck up and assume like ownership of it, was the 6-month anniversary from the time we applied for financing. So somebody at Peterbilt decided to rerun our finance application and declined it. And I was fucking devastated. One of the first times, probably since my fucking last long-term girlfriend fucking dumped me and fucking when I was like 24. So for the first time at that point in like 5 years, I legitimately fucking cried. Like, everything was in place. I'd already invested money in this truck, and Peterbilt turned around literally, the only way it could have been later is if somebody busted in as I'm grabbing the fucking keys and said, "Stop that man! He can't buy this truck." Right? It was about as late as you could fucking get it, like as 11th hour as you could fucking get it, and they declined the financing. And we got lucky. I ended up having to go with a third-party leasing company, which in some ways worked out better, because my payment stayed the same, but they did a lease with zero buyout at the end of it. So it's still effectively finance. I have zero buyout at the end of it, so once my last month's payment is paid, the truck is mine. Fucking hair on my eyeball. It's starting to just really, it doesn't, I can see it. It's not physically irritating me, but I can fucking see it. So we, that ended up working out okay. But that third-party leasing company wanted an extra, I think it was an extra fucking, like, 15 grand down on top of the 15 that we had already agreed on. And they wanted double payments for the first 6 months, right? It's like my dad had said, like, there's always a way to make it work. I said, yeah, but again, there's also, you got to try to decide for yourself, like, at what point is it worth it or not worth it, right? I mean, I would argue that for me it was worth it, because all those double payments are well behind me, and fuck, that guy's bumper's a little fucking loose. Jesus, that's fucking good everywhere. The truck is now mine, and I still make payments on it. Like I said, I've got another 2.5 years of payments on it, but I'm also now at that point where, like I said, I can trade the truck in, and I will make decent money on it off of it, right? I will make a full, new truck's down payment if I so choose, right? But that meant that, like, for the first 6 months, I was paying just a hair. What the fuck would I be at? Fucking 38.50. So you're almost 4. So almost just a hair under $8,000 a month was the truck payment, right, for the first 6 months. That is a lot of fucking money. For most of the places I worked at when I started, when I started with this truck, that was the entirety of my profits for the month. It was eaten up in a truck payment. So it was a truck payment and fuel. At the start, my dad, part of the issue I think we also had, my dad wanted to start his own business. This hair is starting to bug me. I don't know whether it's in my eyeball itself, if it's an eyelash that's gone awry or what. There we go. My dad wanted to, he's always wanted to start his own trucking business, right? So I think he kind of jumped on the idea that now, Now he's got 2 trucks, and he's got somebody working for him, right? So the initial setup was, I'm an employee. So for the first year I drove this truck, I drove the truck as a company guy. Things were so bad. There were weeks where I did not take a paycheck. Like there were weeks where I worked for free because all of the money from my income plus my dad's income was going into paying this truck because of how much they wanted a month, and then fuel, and then, you know, I had to pay WSIB, which is a Canadian, like that's our health benefit stuff, which as a private contractor I don't need it, but when I'm an employee, the employer is required by law to provide me WSIB or an equivalent, right? So my dad was actually like, it was costing him money, like he had to take money out of his paycheck to pay for my truck, right? So it got to the point where he finally said, you know what, this isn't going to work. Like you're on, like not you're on your own in a negative way. He said, you know what, you're on your own because then you make all of the money from the truck. So, you know, you get what you want. Like the truck is my sole responsibility, and he gets out of, you know, a financial shit show that he kind of put himself into. And my dad won't admit that he put himself into. I think he blames me for some of it, even though I worked everywhere he worked. I did the same type of work he did and tried to do the same number of runs, but because I play video games, that's always going to be kind of my dad's excuse, is I wasted time somewhere playing video games. But I digress. So for some people, like, that isn't really a fucking ideal situation, right? To have double truck payments for the first 6 months, or God forbid you have to do it for a year, right? Again, I got through it, but I also had help, right? I've got my father. I've worked for companies that have been willing to move pays around or willing to loan money. Like I've got an advance from my current company right now that he says, just don't worry about paying me back till Christmas, right? Which I'm like, that's great, but we're already halfway through October, so I've only got a month and a half to pay him back, right? And I've got other people I owe money to as well. So it's like, you know, it was my dad's the one that suggested it. I told him, like, I don't really think the ideal solution to keeping the ideal way to keep this truck is to go further into debt, right? Especially not to your employer. I mean, again, time will tell how it works out. You know, the pay has been consistently good here now that I'm kind of getting into the groove of running, you know, a decent number of miles every week. I don't understand why they don't just leave this all under construction. Like, they have us run slow through construction, and they open it up for fucking not even a full mile, and they close it back down again. Like, I understand when so many people complain, oh, fucking 20 miles straight in fucking one lane, but like, I'd almost prefer it at this point because, like, unless I'm wrong and we're losing speed because we're going through some curves and shit, yeah, we might be. That's probably what it is. I just want to try to get more fucking miles put down than I am this week today. Like, I have not been able to drive, like, I haven't been able to maintain 70 miles an hour for a whole lot of today at all, so I may still end up having a 4 fucking hour drive in the morning tomorrow, which will really fucking piss me off. I always find that, like, I'll run my bag off all week, and then, like, the last day I'll get fucked by something, and then I'll still be not late, but I'll be running, like, rushing my ass off on delivery day. Like, it seems like when I worked at Scott Lynn, and maybe that's part of the difference at Scott Lynn, because it was always straight loads out, I'd oftentimes show up, like, you know, multiple hours to a day before my delivery date, so I could show up and I'm not in a rush, right? I just gotta, you know, hang out at the truck stop until an hour or two before my delivery and swing on down there. Where now, like, I'm fucking driving 11 hours a day every fucking day, and you're still almost not making it, right? And again, a lot of it's the fact that, like, I'm doing 55 up this hill and I'm losing speed. By the time I hit the top, I'll probably be, about 53. I'm not losing that much. No, never mind, now I am. Probably close to 50. And you're also dealing with everyone else on the road that fucking, you know, is their speeds are going all over the place because of the hills and shit. So it can be very frustrating, but there isn't really a lot that can be done about it. But yeah, so there's some different strategies there. Like, you not everybody wants to deal with the headache of owning a new truck, right? There's lots of upfront cost that, again, I might be able to offset that now because I'll be able to trade in this truck. Even though it won't be a trade, like I'll be able to sell this truck for money to use as a down payment on the new truck. But my credit score isn't that great either. So I could also potentially be declined just on the basis of my credit score, right? Which is never fun. Now this guy fucking blew my doors off earlier, but make sure shit ain't going very fast now, so we'll see what happens here. I may end up in a drag race for a little bit. Because now that we're going downhill, everyone will have their fucking foot to the floor. Gravity will fucking determine who comes out up the next hill in front. But yeah, so like I have $30,000, like I give or take about $30,000 in this truck to put towards a new one. But my credit score is not very good. I've never had a good credit score. I made the mistake of letting my people in my family when I was 18 use my credit, and they butchered it. And of course, mostly it was my dad. Well, my dad feels bad about it and has given me a lot of money. My dad cannot give me a good credit score, right? Once it's bad, it's very difficult to bring it up again. Especially when, like, through most of my 20s, my credit score wasn't really important because I didn't really, I had a buy here, pay here car, but that was literally the only thing I owned, right? So when you get into your late 20s, early 30s, and you're trying to suddenly become an adult, but rather than starting out with no credit, you're starting out with bad credit. It's much more of an uphill struggle, right? So, I think I can get approved on a new truck if I stick with the same finance or lending company, because, again, this truck is evidence to them because they know where the money comes from, like whose bank account this truck payment comes out of. They know that I can maintain the payments, right? But there's always still the chance that they'll still decline it. Like they might now, because they originally gave an approval, they're like, well, we're fucking stuck with them, but the second we don't have to deal with it anymore, we're gonna get out of it, right? So, we're not, well, it shouldn't say that, we're just not gonna give them more financing, right? And again, at which point either start pursuing other lenders or call the whole thing off. And that's where my dad and I disagree, because my dad will try, he'll try to do something until he'll try unsuccessfully until it blows up in his face, where I believe in quitting when you're ahead, right? So as an example, when I was younger and I looked at buying a car, and the prime financing said there's no way, right? I said, okay, I'm not going to buy a new car. I have a car, it's paid for. It's not the greatest car by any stretch, but at the time I was working in a factory in my hometown, it gets me from A to B. It's not going to get me late, but it is what it is. My dad's response was, well, let's see what we can do. Okay, well, this other subprime leasing company will sell you the car for double the money, but they'll give you financing. You should do that. It's like, I don't want to pay double what this car is worth just to get approved on it. That's kind of not the point, right? There are certain, to an extent, I'll do it. Like, I did it as a step out of subprime lenders into prime lenders. I traded in 2018, I traded in my it was my Ford Focus. It was a base model Focus that I overpaid for. But then that was also, I was getting a loan through a bank instead of a buy here, pay here shithole. I traded that Focus in for a Mustang. The Mustang, the only reason that the price was actually relatively high was because I still had a lot of negative equity in the Focus, because after 3.5 years, all I had done was pay off the interest and actually touched the principal. So my Mustang payment was relatively high. But I had a financing, like tier 2 or whatever. They get 4 tiers, 1 being the best, 4 being the worst. I had tier 2 financing through Ford Credit, right? So again, my current pickup is through Ford Credit. So as a step up, yes, I'll deal with it, but I'm not going to take that big of a hit for a subprime lender, like a buy here, pay here fucking guy. know what I mean? I drink a lot of fucking energy drinks. It's not very good. Don't do it, kids. I'll look more construction. So like, again, with a truck, it's a little bit different because the truck is what makes, like, the piece of equipment makes its own money, effectively. Like, somebody needs to drive the truck. Which is why, interestingly, like, they're also almost a little bit more concerned about your driving experience than your credit score. High profile vehicle, Jesus, exit. What qualifies as a high profile vehicle? Am I a high profile vehicle? Certainly hope not. I mean, if it's anything, it's going to be construction, because I've been through this fucking interstate dozens of times. I don't know what they're doing here for fucking construction. But yeah, so, you know, there is a lot more potential for me to get approved with a similar, hopefully better, but worst comes to worst, similar terms to this truck. Where it gets tricky is that, you know, with inflation and stuff, the new truck is more expensive than this truck is, or was. Like, I paid $187 for this truck before tax. The new one is $192, right? So it went up by $4,000. The new one has a lot more shit being put onto it as well. There's there's a couple of options I can do. I can either buy and install all the stainless myself, get the stainless ordered through Peterbilt and add it to the cost of the truck and install it myself, or I can get Peterbilt to buy and install everything, right? And those go in ascending order from cheapest to most expensive. Probably the biggest expense is the big fake stacks, right? Because you're still buying stacks. Like, the stacks and the installation is like $3,500. At the end of the day, it is actually just cheaper if I go with real stacks. But then I have an asymmetrical truck. Like, that's, you know, again, it's one of those decisions. Like, do I want basically the same stacks that I have now, although I might get the ones with the older style, like the heat shields that are just fully round. I think those look fucking cool. But it's either, do I get, like, you know, am I okay with the step I have now? Because it'll cost less. I love your lack of use of a turn signal or fucking trying for any sort of distance between us. It's a real fucking dick move. Or pay the extra money to get a grass burner and fake stacks installed. It costs no more money to get a grass burner put on, but that is with no stacks, right? So they put the fucking plastic, the body colored panels in, like the car hauler where the stacks would be, and that's it, right? That's your no charge option, right? It is an upcharge to put factory exhaust on the sides that are not installed or not connected. It is an upcharge again to put big fake stacks. Now, there's also, like, some people might argue, well, if you get the regular stacks, right, they're already designed to run with fucking emissions. You could hook them up and then you just have real stacks and the step boxes. And that is, I've seen some guys have done that, right? Because it's a stupid setup how they're doing, how Peterbilt is doing it, because they have, for some reason, they want the stacks to be routed out of the passenger step. So that's where they locate the DPF. With an undermounted exhaust, the DPF is basically a part of the actual exhaust pipe assembly. So it just comes straight back underneath the frame, and therefore you can put whatever you want for a step. So I don't understand why they can't put a pipe straight back from the frame or from the manifold like you do, and have that one single pipe after the DPF split into your two stacks, or do the one stack, because they're doing that anyways, right? Like, it's kind of it's like how Kenworth won't put a PACCAR in their long bed. Like, it's, you ask somebody at the dealership, they don't fucking know why. Like, they just won't do it. They don't have an explanation for why they won't do it. They just won't do it. Right? You get this option or you get that option. You can't have the best of both worlds. So that's the problem, right? And it's one of the things, like, that, you know, it'll change the price, but it won't change the price so drastically that it's worth me constantly getting Peterbilt to do up a new spec every time. But I got to decide, like I said, is it, do I absolutely need the matching steps? Or can I choose to save a bit of money and not have matching steps, right? I mean, personally, I'm leaning towards matching steps, right? You know, again, it's a toss-up either way, because I was about to say, because then I can also get, like, you know, the straight pipes that I want. But then, you know, there'll be a million people out there that will realize that they're not connected and just get chirpy for them. And while I don't really care what other people think, you know, it's also is hard to you know, brag or be really proud of my great big straight pipes when they don't actually do anything, right? It's different. If you got great big straight pipes, you can fucking roll coal and, you know, listen to that fucking engine sound or your engine brake. But it's completely different too when you've got, you know, a sneaky little grass burner underneath and big fake stacks on the side. Like it still looks good, and that's why I don't really have a problem with it. But it is also, like, not necessary. You can't really feel proud of having straight pipes, I guess, right? I can still be proud of how the overall truck looks, but it's a little bit harder to be proud of the stacks specifically. But again, it's different strokes for different folks, right? I know people that wouldn't be caught dead with fake stacks. I've got people that fucking love them. I've seen a lot more trucks going down the road, like 389s with fake pipes, like, and a grass burner. You know, Scott Lynn does it now, because now you can get the, I mean, they've always done fake stacks with a grass burner, but as soon as Peterbilt made it an option to put the matching steps on, they went for it. I see a lot of people kind of have like you're a pretender or a poser mindset to it, but it's still the same fucking truck. Like, you know, a 389 is a 389. It doesn't really matter where the exhaust comes out of. Like, do you go after car haulers because they don't have stacks? No, because they, you know, their job requires them to have it. Well, for most of them to have undermounted exhaust, right? So it's like, well, again, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But like I said, is it worth the $3,500-ish upcharge just to have matching steps? Again, the passenger side step is useful. You can actually store things in it, because it's an empty step. The driver's side has your batteries. The passenger side will have actual storage. So my dad puts all of his fluids that he doesn't want getting spilled in the cab, even underneath the bunk, he has to put in there, which is a good idea. But, like, you know, I don't know if I need that, right? I know I don't like the asymmetrical steps. I don't like the passenger step on this truck. I mean, I don't ever really use it, so it's not that big of a deal, but it is, you know, it's still kind of an eyesore. The truck will never look matching. So again, I like the way my dad's truck turned out, right? It's symmetrical, it looks good, you know, and it looks like a nice fucking big, it's not, you know, it's not quite like a show pony, but it's definitely not, like, this truck just looks like a working truck, right? This truck, you know, there are things on it that are not done with, you know, again, the people will assume it was me, but there are things that this truck has that look like they were done without aesthetics in mind, right? Like the fuel tanks. Well, you can argue it's easier to access the driver's side fuel tank with the way it's set up, but you know, that's not what I wanted, right? But it is what it is. So like I said, that's kind of the toss-up, is I can get the truck set up to be basically exactly the way I wanted this truck, or again, I could go the alternative, where I mentioned at the start of this video, with having, you know, trying to decide whether or not I want, like, to balance comfort with having a cool truck, a W9, which you get matching steps and real stacks, and you get a couch and, you know, nice living space, right? It's such a pain in the ass to try to decide what I want to do. I'll have to keep thinking about it. So, anyways, I think it's been over an hour. I'm gonna try to keep these to around an hour, because I love to ramble, but I've noticed, you know, fucking camera likes to cut videos into like smaller segments, and then suddenly I got multiple rubber side down and the shiny side up.